What up, guys? This is a deck profile of top four Luard for BSF Houston we just went to. Here's one of my teammates now, and he's gonna show you why he brought Luard and how this build performed well.
Sure. So I'm Zach Martin. Like Garnet said, I was on his team for Houston BSF. I decided to bring Luard for Premium. For a couple of reasons. I didn't think that anyone else in the room would really be expecting it to come up. And it's kind of hard to get your hands on, so I didn't think a lot of people would have tested against the deck. And it's pretty good into a lot of the decks in the current format. So starting with the deck profile, main deck. So this is the Crest version of the build. So we are running Root as the starter, and we have our 4 Crest makers. So basically goal of the deck is to get into him as your main ride so that you can generate the Crest. It makes your stride turns a lot more effective. Morpheus is a lot more, has a lot more kill potential if you can get extra power on them and make guarding even more difficult for them. So as part of that, just going through the rest of the lineup here, I'm going to start off on grade 1s. We are running 4 Esras. We're not running Elementaria in the build. The reason for that is recurring PGs is just really good in Premium in general. And in order to consistently see them, I decided to run 4 instead of doing a 3-1 split with Elementaria. The other reason this will come up is the Ritual name. You need it every once in a while when you get into late game. I'm on Nemain, but I'm only on 3 copies of her and the 1 copy of Abyssal as my package. In the past, a lot of people run Nemain as a 4-of just to consistently see it, but with the new promo that came out, you can get to it quite easily. And I felt that 4 was just a little bit too bricky for some of the pieces that I wanted to run in the deck. And then Abyssal is just really necessary going second to build up extra hand. So that's where we're on the 1-of copy. For the remainder of the ones, I'm on 2 Karen for countercharge. The 1 copy of the OG Abyssal Owl very rarely comes up, but can help you get into the correct Luard name for what you want to ride. More relevantly, it's a ritual name in deck, and it's a countercharger that doesn't have to be called by ability. You can always call it from hand if you see it. And then the last grade 1 that we run is 1 copy of Homily. This is the deck that can search it, so no reason not to run the 1. Moving into the grade 2s, for us at BSF Houston, the hand fixer was just barely legal, so that's part of the reason I decided to bring the deck. This really helps you find your Crest a lot more easily, having roughly 8 copies of it in the deck. It can also find you your other pieces, and it can get you into your grade 1s with its on-attack skill. So this will get you into the Nemain, which was why I was comfortable cutting it down to 3. For the remainder of the 2s, we're on 3 copies of Dagda, and 4th Dagda, Morfessa, who basically is kind of a semi-Dagda if you've seen the Crest. She is able to fetch Dagda out of the deck, so she acts as an extender. But if you don't see the Crest, she is dead, so that's why we're only on the 1 copy. She's also 5th 10k that you can ride, which did come up quite often over the weekend. For the Luards, I'm on 4 copies of Dragcart with our 1 brick, Drag Driver. The main goal of the deck is to go Force 2. So the idea here is that you ride the Crest maker, get your Crest, and then if you're going first, you go for 3 Force 2 markers. So that way on your Morfessa turn, you're going to have 3 crit, 2 card guard, and plus minimum 20k to the front row, 15 off her, 5k off the Crest. Makes for really threatening turns if you get your opponent to 3 early by just being aggressive. Everything becomes lethal from that point forward. So that was the idea behind it. If you don't see the Crest and you are going first, then you'll go Force 1 just for the extra numbers. But primarily you are going Force 2. And if you ever just ride a single 1, I was going Force 2 under the Vanguard. So that way you have pressure on your van swings. I'm also on 2 copies of Dragfall. Best ride going second, just because it enables you to have free stride, gives you pitch fodder for all of your PGs. You want to transition into him later anyway, and he works really well with one of our strides by calling out ritual names from the deck in order to pop your opponent's rear guards. And then I'm on 2 copies of Ildana. If you see it early, you can use its hand effect, but more than that, it's really just a 13k beat stick that you can call out, and it's card draw if your opponent's being aggressive and giving you a lot of damage to work with. Triggers, I'm on 4 copies of the Claret Crit, just for the draw ability. You really need hand and premium currently, so I decided to run 4 copies of that. 3 copies of the Stride Crit, because very often you're sitting on V Dragheart, or you may end up riding V Driver, so you do have to have enough to pitch for Stride. So 3 of that, and then 1 copy of Belial Owl, just for the additional draw. Again, you can call this out off of skills. Having the extra crit that goes back to deck is just also pretty useful for the build. Heals, I'm on a 2-2 split. I was pretty happy with the 2-2. The counter charge comes up way more often, I think, than the heal guards. The heal guards, the only time I ended up using it over the weekend was to call one of them against a DP player who damage denied me after I had healed out of the 1 damage they had given me early. Getting the 1 damage let me go off from there. So I don't think I'd do anything different, except maybe even go to 3 copies and 1 copy. And then 3 stand. I decided to only run 3 copies just so that I could be more crit heavy and have the stride fodder, and then I ran red OT as the 4th stand in the deck. It does make your play patterns a little bit awkward sometimes, where you'll attack with 1 rear guard, then your van, if you have the OT still in deck so that its effect can fully resolve. But if you have the OT in deck and you've thinned down, it's well worth, especially since with 3, you're probably not going to see double stand anyway. Moving into the stride deck, we have the mandatory card. If you're playing premium, have to run it. 3 copies of Morthessa. It is your primary stride, and it's the reason to run the deck in general. You want to kill your opponent on this in most matchups, and with Force 2 in the Crest, it's now just even better than ever. Being minimum 20k to front row and 3 damage on 2 card guard is just super threatening. I'm on 2 copies of Krokurok. It is your 2nd best stride, and it's your primary setup stride. If you can't get to Ritual 10, this will help you set up hand advantage, and it's your best stride in your worst matchups. This alone can solo Chaos, and a lot of the time can solo Mega Colony, which are the 2 worst matchups in the deck. Mega Colony, they better have the 1 of Old Brilliant Blister in hand, otherwise you'll have enough hand advantage that you can keep riding. And against Chaos, you can sack your board against them and play around their G-Guards by calling to front row, keep your board clear, keep theirs clear. It helps in those really bad matchups. 2 copies of Dragobus. This is your damage denial option if you're being completely damage denied. This is really the only thing that you can go into, and sometimes it's fine late game as well. I never came up, but there's space, so no reason not to run it. 1 copy of Driver. Driver, if you don't see any of your attackers, all your 2s are your primary attackers. If you don't see any of them, this can get one of them for you. So this can get Morthessa, which can get Dagda, or this can get Dagda, which can then start going off. And if you're on Force 2, you're still applying pretty decent pressure. 1 copy of Ogma. There was 1 more space in the deck, so this was the flex spot that I was debating on. I decided to go with Ogma just because against certain matchups like Grand Blue, who keep their board entirely clear, you can pitch 5 cards out of their hand every once in a while. G-Guards, 3 copies of Grieger. Just your best G-Guard right now. It gets the most shield out of all of the G-Guards that we have access to. More importantly, it's a PG when you really need it, and it can recycle your grade 1s when you're on your drag card. Use this to put back Terrans and if you only have one PG and drop, you can always send one back, because otherwise it's sometimes hard to keep your deck count up. One copy of Brannock, just helps set up Ritual. One copy of Jellido. Weirdly enough, this is kind of the MVP. It's really good in the current, probably best deck in Premium matchup. Against Shiranui, if they force you to call two things, you can always just call two triggers to the board. They're going to force you to call one anyway to turn their Mizukaze on. You can just call two more, and then use her to use them as guard and turn them into a new card in hand. And then one copy of Plotmaker, just as flip fodder, and sometimes you don't want to send anything back to the deck and still need 25k shield.
Really awesome. So in terms of like personal record, how was your record for that this weekend was for in Chirag?
So in Swiss, I was X2, so we had 7 rounds of Swiss. My 2 losses were both to Shiranui. Both of my opponents saw their Crest Maker, and I didn't in those matchups. And then in Top Cut, I was 1-2. 2 losses again were to Shiranui. One of them was to a really solid game played by the opponent where I had a pretty suboptimal opening, and the other one, my opponent hit 6 damage defensive OT. But deck's pretty solid performing into everything. I played against the Genesis stalled deck out build. This performed really well against that. I had one game against Naru. I managed to just out aggro them, and then a couple of matchups against like Dimension Police. This is the deck that can add a bunch of PGs to hand, so it's fairly decent into the current meta outside of exactly, pitch your entire hand Shiranui.
And one final question. So you think with this upcoming season, do you think Luard would still be as relevant as to what you think, or you think it's still like a casual, fun deck to bring to in terms of Springfest?
I'd say it's probably more on the casual side than anything else. If you don't see your Crest, it can be pretty low power. It's a solid deck. It has really good recursion, really good attack power and aggressiveness, but there are other things in the meta that are just probably more consistent. The biggest issue is that the skill ceiling on the deck's a little bit high. It does take a lot of thinking, and at the end of Swiss, you're definitely just, your brain is fried after playing it for 7-8 rounds.
Well, that's it. That's the deck for Luard Premium Crest. Thank you for Zach for having me record him and sharing his deck profile with him. Being the first ever to actually talk with Luard Crest for the first time ever. Anything you want to say just before we head off?
I would just say, if you have a pet deck that you want to take, just get really good at it, practice against the current meta, and really I think you can really take most things into the current format. It's just really unsolved, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and thank you a lot for helping me get in this top 4, and thank you for being my team. So, bye, guys.